Okay. We're trying to get this rolling. We know you don't get a chance to talk to some of these folks, except at these meetings. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. We have we think a pretty cool agenda. You're going to hear a lot of different people talking about things that why we love these lakes and what we're doing about it. Want to give special thanks right now to Ruth Bay and as usual her helpers who make sure that you all have a good meal before we get started, and as well as special thanks to Shorts Brewery, who I got to kick up their contribution to. We're gonna have some beer and some cider. Cider is new that they've contributed, and Village Market came through with as they did last year, with the wine for this meeting. So patronize these folks. So I'm going to turn this over for the first of our reports, and that is going to be from Phil Spangenberg, our treasurer. You okay? Okay.
Good evening. I have some good numbers to report for this year. At the end of 2023, we had total assets of $192,000. $35,000 was in our operating account. $59,000 was in our strategic environmental fund, which is where we park our champions pledges. And our Vanguard investment was at $97,000. So those add up to the $192,000, and which was $53,000 more than the year before. We got that way with, we took in $119,000 in income, almost $70,000 was in dues, another record year. So you can pat yourselves on the back for that. Our business supporters program got some legs this year and more than doubled what we took in the year before. So we were up to about 10,000. Our champions continued with their pledges and had some new champions as well. So that was a total of 21,000. Our endowment fund at the Community Foundation provided us with a grant of $4,200, and our Vanguard investment made almost $10,000 for the year. So that was our $119,000. Our expenses for the year, some of the was totaled $66,000. Some of the larger ones were our administrative assistant, that was $12,000. Our postage and printing for the newsletters, that was around $13,000. And the biologist that that monitors the health of our lakes, paid her about $20,000. And then other expenses were rent and insurance and annual meeting costs and things like that. So it totaled $66,000. So $119,000 in income, $66,000 in expenses, and it was our $53,000 increase from the year before. So, any questions?
Thank you, Phil. a very solid year, and I think we're off to a pretty good start for 24 as well. So that's, you're going to be hearing more about towards the end of our program, finances and opportunities to contribute. So next up is Deanna, who is going to be telling us how our membership is going.
Well, I think that Phil told you a lot about our membership income, which was just great. I want to thank all of you for being loyal supporters and coming to our meetings and helping us to educate your neighbors and to help us educate to protect our beautiful lakes and rivers. Today, I thought it was, I just noticed about a week ago that the Chamber's new tourist booklet is highlighting the Elk Rapids chain of lakes. And that's their front cover, which is kind of interesting. And you can pick these up at the Chamber. But I feel like that shows how important the lakes are to the region. And we've got to be proud that we are part of protection of those. I guess I would say that my main goal for this year is to try to increase how many emails we have for our riparians, our homeowners. We only have about a half, and that's also the amount of people that live on the lake that are actually dues paying members. So we are at about a half, so we have a good amount of increase, hopefully. And if we can get emails, we can do reminders easier to ask people have you forgotten to pay your dues, or maybe ask them, why have you never paid dues? So emails are pretty important, and some of you, I've done some work on that with the help of our administrative assistant, trying to ask neighbors, do you know their emails, ask associations to help us. So that's my number one goal, is to try to get emails so that it will help us communicate and to educate our homeowners. So I'm hoping to keep my fingers crossed that in 2025, I can report that ESLA now is able to reach about 75% of our homeowners by email.
I think we can also count on Deanna to make sure that her spouse makes his annual contribution. Excellent. Maybe steps it up a little bit. Mary Beth Kazansky, a past president of ESLA, still a board member, also a member of the board of Tip of the Mint Watershed Council, is going to, as a past president, gosh, do I have to do this eventually? She is going to conduct our annual elections. So I will turn it over to her.
I hope you can hear me okay. I don't have much voice today. Maybe that's a good thing. Before I do the elections, I think it is also my task to update you on our bylaws revision. I was tasked, as well as a group of others, by Bob to update our bylaws, which had not been seriously looked at probably since 2007. So I was joined by Steve Francis, Dean Ginther, Phil Spangenberg, and we actually read the document multiple times and updated it to make it more of an appropriate document for how we run things now, and also in a digital age. So we put in components that allow us to communicate with you electronically and clarify a lot of the membership issues, voting issues, and things of the like in the digital age. You should have received a link in the last email blast about the old and the new documents. I don't know if anyone was in need of high quality reading material or not, but it was there. I don't know if anyone has any questions about what we did, why we did, how we did, whatever. I'd be glad to entertain that. Otherwise, we thought we did a pretty good job of defining how the operation works now. So I guess I would like to call the membership, or for someone to perhaps suggest that we take a vote so that we can know for sure. George, thank you. Can I have a second? Steve, thank you. And so we will take a vote on our new bylaws. All those in favor? Hands up. And opposed? Thank you. So our new bylaws will be in effect. As far as our elections, I lost my page here on my phone. We are presenting for your approval, President George Seafried, our Vice President John Spevacek. I saw you before. You're here somewhere. Oh, please. Please. George is already standing. The ever faithful Phil Spangenberg. Where are you, Phil? You were just here. Linda Slopesma for our secretary, and Nancy Covington Schreiber for our correspondence recording secretary. So, any nominations from the floor? Any motion that we vote? Anna, okay, and a second. Trying to keep it legal here. And a second, thank you. And all in favor of this executive committee panel? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you, because otherwise you have to be on the board. And then, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. And then for board members, I have Ruth Bay, Bob Campbell, Dale Claude Pierre, Steve Francis, Jan Garvey, Andy Hogarth, myself, Ken Krentz, Bob McCreary, Robert Ryder, Deanna Seafried. Do I have any nominations for the floor? We are very willing to take nominations from the floor if you'd like to join us in our work. And if after this meeting you change your mind, please just reach out. And I need a motion for approval. Thank you, John. And a second back there at the line. Thank you. And a vote from the floor. All in favor? Aye. And no one's opposed, I'm sure, because otherwise you're back on the board. So I would like to now hand this back over to Bob. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to admit right up front that I finished writing this about 10 minutes before I got in the car. So I am going to be referring to my notes here. Wanted to talk a little bit about where ESLA was at when I got in line for this position. In 2019, I received a phone call from Ruth Bay. I was probably, I don't know, Ruth, one of 5 or 6 people, and everybody else said, hell no. That's how these things go. I'd only been on the board 2 years at that point. She asked me if I'd consider being vice president, and the way ESLA works is if you agree to be vice president, it means that you agree to do all the work that comes with being president after that, which is why it's really hard to find people to agree to be vice president. As we have discovered in the past, as I've seen personally. Anyways, a few days later, I said yes, and knowing that in 2 years, I'd have to step into Mary Beth's shoes, and those were big shoes to fill. I had an inkling at the time of the impact it would have on my favorite retirement hobby. I won't tell you what it is, but I will tell you that my license plate reads, I fish. Early the following year, our world fell into a deep funk when COVID struck. ESLA didn't publish its normal spring newsletter because we were all pretty distracted by other things. But in the coming months, we discovered that our member dues had gone into an absolute free fall. And that we were short at that time on emails as well as phone numbers. We don't often call people, but emails are a godsend. Gradually, we pulled the supporters like you back. 2 years ago, we signed up with a company that specializes in helping nonprofits like ESLA manage its membership. It's been worth every penny. Michael, who I forgot to thank earlier as part of the thank yous. Michael is operating the video tonight. He is our administrative assistant, but whenever we find something else that no one on the board wants to do, we ask Michael to do it. So, but he's also very adept. He's way more adept than most of us at anything digital. So one of the great things about it, and it's called Bloomerang, this outfit we signed up with. They're probably the best known of the various outfits that give advice to nonprofits. The original idea, I think, came from Steve Francis on this, who had familiarity with Bloomerang from other work that he's done. Among other things, one of the benefits of that is if you call up, which members frequently do, to say, I paid my dues this year. Michael and sometimes Deanna in seconds can look that up and give you an answer. We also, in the last few years, probably more like, what, Dean, 3-4 years ago, where we looked at the member dues, which had for many years been started at $25 and topped out at $100. And there'd been a little bit of inflation over those 20 years. And so we changed that range to 50, and we figured, what the hell, we topped out at about $1,000. And amazingly, we lost virtually no one, and a lot of people, many of you, wrote big checks and are part of the reason why what you heard from Phil is true, that financially ESLA is doing well, and we're trying to fill, we're doing things with that, with the financial support that you've given us. We're doing big things, new things. Sam and Ken Krentz a couple years ago started plankton surveys. We think over time that's going to give us a better picture of what's going on, especially, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, with the phytoplankton, that's where it all starts in our lakes. Nothing else lives, because phytoplankton is the food for the little snails and crayfish and tiny fish, and then the big fish. And so one of the reasons that we were very interested in that is that we've seen declines. And some of you may remember, who have been here longer than I have, which is about 12 years, when Elk Lake had a really strong whitefish population. Bob McCreary, back me up on that.
Absolutely.
And what's happened in the last 10, 12 years?
Disappeared.
And as well, we have noted that anecdotally, that the growth of lake trout, as well as the numbers, has been way off. And other deep water fish seem to be very affected. It was in 2022 when we talked the college into bringing their research boats onto Elk Lake, where one of the reasons for doing that was to see if we could confirm the presence of quaggas, and we did, although it was sort of accidental. We were running their, what amounts to a transducer, if you're familiar with those on fish finders, but it looked more like a torpedo and weighed probably 50 pounds. And we're dragging these. I was on the boat, it was my boat, actually my pontoon, and with 6 students and an instructor on it. And the depth came up very quickly right off the golf course. And they said, throw her in reverse. And when we pulled that transducer up, it was full of weeds, and the weeds were full of quagga mussels. And that was really the first time we had confirmed them. Since then, Torch Lake has also confirmed in numerous places the presence of quaggas, which, they've been bad news in the bays and Lake Michigan as well. Apologize. Wanted to talk about some other things as our funding has increased that we think we have made a difference with. If you've looked at our website lately, it is night and day from what it was a year ago. And every link, every page was thought through completely. We're working, as we have learned with websites, you have to not just be happy when they're finished, you have to stay on top of it. And I will give an incredible amount of credit for this to Jan Garvey on all the environmental stuff that we put on there, and she put up with me editing, and as well as Michael, who attended all these meetings. And again, like I said, we go to Michael whenever we need somebody. So Michael's now kind of our webmaster, and is charged with making sure that we're not getting out of date on anything, updating to reflect when we've got anything to announce on new speakers for short things, as well as other things. The other things that have changed in the last few years, short things. You will remember when we were down at Twisted Fish, and we had some very nice short things down there, completely dependent on the weather. We've got kind of a crappy sort of day here. And this place, I don't know, what do you all think of this place? We think it's like and thanks to the village of Elk Rapids for for what we get. It's worth many times more than what do we pay for this? I can't even remember.
We do not need to pay. It's gratis for us.
It's gratis.
We are taking care of the rivers, and we are.
Okay, great. Even better. Okay, another thing that we added for the first time last year is the lake learning tours with Samantha. And this is something, one of my favorite lake associations, my favorite lake association other than ours, in our part of northern Michigan is Glen Lake. And I had, one of several people I occasionally go to for counsel has been Rob Carner, their lake biologist, and they've been doing this for a while with a lot of people very interested. And this year we had to, initially we were oversubscribed for people who had RSVP'd and wanting to go out, and we had to add one. And fortunately, Samantha was willing to to do that, and our Captain Teddy was also willing to do that. Last year, we did something ESLA has never done, which is to be involved in an environmental lawsuit. And we've publicized what we can about that in newsletters and other communications. The good news, and Steve Francis is going to talk about this more, is that finally, after about a year of delays based on requests by the defendant to dismiss the case, the federal judge in Grand Rapids has said we can move forward. So, and that is a wonderful thing. Just a few other things that we've used your dollars to support. And George was very involved with this, an Antrim County program aimed at assessing the risk in our waterways to dams. We've also supported, like other lake associations in our chain, lunches for young people taking the Antrim County Sheriff's Department voter safety courses in 23, and we thought for many years that that we would just kind of be quiet about the buoys that we had marking safe passage from Skegemog into the Torch River, because we were pretty sure we didn't have a permit for those. And but lo and behold, Bob Kingon was sorting through his records and came across about a 20 or 25-year-old permit, but we had to get it renewed, and went through a little process and a little back and forth. And Pat Pierce was who's a former board member, was a huge help with that, and as well as others. Dale Claude Pierre, I don't think is here tonight, but he's been helping with this as well. Another heads up that I wanted to make is that several of us, Dean and I and Michael, have had some meetings. My background is really communications, and Dean's is everything. And but especially, I mean, he's a great photographer. He was a professor down in the UT system, and has been our newsletter editor forever. And whenever we'd put out a newsletter, Dean would say, this is my last newsletter. What are we going to do about this? And so what we think this makes a lot of sense. We are going to be, and we're still working out all the details. Instead of publishing 3 printed newsletters a year, we're going to be printing 1, and only we're not going to call it a newsletter. It's going to be more like, and we'll probably come up with some cool name for it. Michael, that's on your agenda too. And an annual report, and I think it's going to be very nice, and we will continue. The plan is to continue to do monthly e-blast. If we don't have your email, there's no way you can get an e-blast. So Deanna and Jan are happy to take them on your way out this evening. You got them all? Okay. And I would think this group is pretty good about that. But we will continue that, but we also, and we're still exploring the notion of doing what would amount to a more newsletter, like greater detail on some reports that we make, some stories that would be digital, so that you would get only if we have your email. The last thing I wanted to say is, you know, we're being the best stewards we can be with your money. We think there are concerns, and what's going on in the water is a big one. So many of these things trace back to invasives and like the what's another? It was curly leaf pondweed, right? That
Yes.
we're very concerned about.
Yes.
And okay, Sam, I was looking in the wrong direction because you used to be over there. What else is? Well, you're going to talk, so I don't need to do this. I will tell you this is weird, and it's, well, besides golden brown algae, I don't know what, is there anything we can do about golden brown algae? We don't know. There's a lot of research still going on. The various groups in Torch Lake are active with this. But, just a personal aside, we bought our property here in 2011. Until about the last 2 or 3 years, every time I'd walk out on the dock, we have a stump 3 or 4 feet to the south of our dock, and it was always full of crayfish. And then once the summer got underway, there would be bluegills, sunfish down there. And it's great. Grandkids, of course, I make them release them because they're all really small. And last year and this year, barely a crayfish. And I know that that there again is another invasive that is a threat, but I've heard more generally from some bass fishermen and others that they're ice fishermen too, because if you ice fish in water under 15 feet, you see crayfish, or you used to see crayfish. So those are the sort of things that concern me. There's changes going on. ESLA will continue to investigate, and where we can advocate and find solutions, we will. So. Next up is George, your new president.
That's quite a distinction to be president of this organization. I don't really have a lot to say about what our future plans are. I think that Bob has shared with you a lot of what has been on the books, what the board's been working on. We hope to move this organization a little further forward. Each shall we say, a group of people that join the board have different ideas, but we'd like to also hear your ideas. So really, talk to the board members, email us. We really want to hear from you what is on your minds and what you think this organization can do. I don't have any large plans to say tonight. I will tell you, though, that what we've been working on for a few months, in addition to everything Bob has talked about, is the 75th anniversary of this organization. The organization, if you're not familiar with the history, started in 1950 with several people on Skegemog. And the next year, those people expanded into a larger group of people that were on Elk Lake. And so in 1950, we look at that as the start of ESLA. So the Elk-Skegemog Lakes Association in 2025 will be celebrating its 75th anniversary. So over the last few months, the board and various people have given us some input on things that we should consider doing to sort of recognize our organization and our successes. and what else we might do going forward. So we've come up with 3 or 4 ideas. Most of these ideas, Michael cannot do by himself. He will need help. So we'd really like people to step forward and help with some of these ideas. I'll give you some of the general ideas. First of all, if you think it's possible, we want to have a bigger annual meeting. Ruth, do you think you can top this? We're going to count on you. We're going to count on you. So we're going to have a bigger annual meeting, something that we can celebrate the successes of this organization, all its past leaders, and all of you who've donated to us. We're also going to try to improve and expand our presence out there in the rest of the world, people who aren't riparians, people who don't live right on the lake or the river, right on the shoreline. We're all, anyone in this region is really reliant upon this water, not just for the recreation and the tourism and the economics, but it's also for groundwater issues, for the health of the natural environment here with the various animals and plants, etc. So it's really a bigger picture than just if you live on the lake or live on the river. So we're going to get more of a public presence and do that through communications, increased communications. Bob talked about the email blast, but we're also going to go out to the general public and try to get them educated. And then the third thing we're looking to do is continue on with our mission to be an educational organization. And sometimes we need to do that beyond the group of people who are already here that are interested in this. We need to get some younger people, the next generation of leaders and people that are concerned. So we're going to look into how can we get those folks into the organization and express their needs and what they think we should be doing. So that's going to be a big plan for 75. Hopefully in January, you'll start to see some things that we will bring forward that'll help with the celebration. But if you have some interest and you have some time, we'd appreciate if you would just step forward. It can be for a couple hours, can be for a couple of days, can be for 6 months. But just step forward. We're always looking for help. Okay? So I think that covers my section, Bob.
You're now going to hear from another Bob Kingon, yet another past president of ESLA. We're everywhere.
Thanks, Bob. Good evening. A little background. When I first became a board member at ESLA in 1998, well, the first job was putting me on a membership committee, and my mentor was...
Microphone.
You just gotta put it closer to your mouth.
That's it? No? Closer. All right, thank you. Yeah, so my mentor was Warren Goodell. I know John and Linda remember him. Just a great gentleman. And so one of the things we did first was develop a database, one database that included all 1,100 parcels of land in our watershed, all the riparian lands. The other database was all the people that owned those lands. So that was our membership database. What we found, of course, was that membership database is dynamic. And I remember one year we had 50 homes that were sold. So we have to know who those new homeowners are. And so that's working with our equalization offices to identify those new homeowners. We have their tax address. So what we want to do is reach out and recruit them as members. And so we would put together packages that would include our latest newsletter. Hand this to me, Michael. A welcome letter from the president and a riparian handbook. You guys remember getting some of these in a packet? Well, this one, which we still have a stack of here, was last revised in 2005. So forward ourselves 15 years, so about 2021, we're saying, don't we need to revise this document? Said, yes, we do. And so there's a group called the Watershed Plan Implementation Team, WIPIT, we call ourselves. And it's made up of a group of all the lake associations in our watershed, a lot of volunteer groups, a lot of environmental groups, a lot of government officials. So we meet quarterly, And we're kind of guided by our watershed plan. And in there is an education element. And so we brought up this idea of revising our guide. And they said, hey, how the Lake Association, that's a great idea. Count us in, how can we be involved? Somebody else said, well, let's make it digital so we don't have a document that's outdated within a year or two. And so we decided to go the digital route. And so we asked for volunteers, and Christine Chrisman, Executive Director of the Watershed Center of Grand Traverse Bay, stepped up, and Peg Comfort, longtime environmental activist out of Bel Air, founder of the Torch Conservation Center, and myself. So the three of us took it on, and we had a small grant from the Dole Foundation. And so what we did first in the fall of 2022 was pull together a group of interested people from lake associations, membership chairmen and others, and brought them together and said, bring the best materials you have, the best resources you have in terms of educating our members and our riparians. And then we brainstormed for a couple hours, trying to come up with what are the priority areas that we think would be most important for new riparian homeowners to know. So we developed a list, we had a priority list. Then the second thing we did was we pulled together a focus group of 8 homeowners who had bought riparian property in the previous 2 years, people nominated by lake associations. And so we heard from them. We said, you know, you've been where you are for a year or two. What is it that you wish you had known 2 years ago before you became experienced in where you are? And so we had a lot of ideas about what are things that riparian owners should know. So we converged these and we ended up with 6 elements. So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to take you through what we did next. Okay, so this is the Watershed Center. Everybody see this okay? Does it look all right? Because I can't see up there. Let me know if there's a problem. So this is the Watershed Center website. And I'm going to go over here to a tab that says Get Involved. And I'm going down to Water Resource Guide. So there is our new resource guide for riparians. Now, here are the 6 areas that we developed based upon the 2 activities that I mentioned. Septic systems, riparian buffers, stormwater runoff, shoreline erosion, boating practices, permits, and requirements. And you'll see this blue bar underneath there is the resources. So you probably can't see that real well, but these are various resources that are here. Let me click on one. So this is something put out by Tippecanoe Watershed Council, and it's just everything you want to know about septic systems. And let me scroll down to an interesting table that was put out by Michigan State. So this shows you on one axis here the size of your septic tank, how many people in your household, and then the number of years between septic tank pumping based upon these factors. Of course, if you were there, if you live in your place for 6 months, you could double this. On the other hand, you gotta think about the 12 or 15 people you have on July 4th weekend. So there's a lot of factors, but this is a very good guide. So that's an example of the resources in that area. Riparian buffers. Let's look at shoreland living. This is excellent, like a booklet. That, you know, again, I said that we had 50 or 60 brochures and so forth that we culled through. So we'll pull the best to include on this website. So just scrolling down. A lot of good information. Okay, so I gotta keep moving. Stormwater runoff. Everybody has heard about rain gardens, but if you really want to know how to make a rain garden, this is it. It's got all the details on how deep, where, how much rainwater you should expect, et cetera, et cetera. It's really excellent. You won't find this anywhere else. Shoreline erosion. Here is a great website. Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership. This has got a lot of resources on it, and natural shorelines, shoreline stewards, introduction, and here, evaluate your property. Click on this, leads you to a survey, answer questions, you get an idea how well you're doing in terms of your property, in terms of prevention of pollution, etc. And then you can see, you probably can't read those, but a lot of other shoreline basics, erosions, native plants, etc. Another good resource. Then let's go to boating practices. Here, I had trouble pulling this up earlier today. This should be in the Michigan regulations, but it's not coming in. Well, yeah, here's an example of something that's fairly sophisticated scientific article on the literature review of wakeboat effects on aquatic habitat. And the people from Clam Lake, as you can imagine, are the ones who suggested that we include this because they are being really adversely impacted by wakeboats on their rather narrow Clam Lake. Okay, so permits and zoning. Here's a really good overview of what a property owner needs to be aware of in terms of if they do activities in certain ways, certain areas, what kind of permits might they have to need. And so it's kind of a walkthrough guide in that regard. It's a good document. And also under this tab, we have hyperlinks to every township in the watershed. So if you want to follow through, see what the ordinances are in your township, you can do it.
So all of these are on the website?
Hmm?
All of this information on the website?
Yes, yeah, I mean, you just click on any of those townships, go to that township.
What
There you
is the
go.
watershed's name?
Excuse me?
What's the name of this website?
But wait a minute, it's on the Elk Lake website. Michael, where do we find that? Yeah, I forgot, I was a little confused.
It's under the,
It's Grand Traverse Bay, that's the website.
I know, but we have put a link on the Elk-Skegemog website.
correct.
And I actually had a little trouble finding it the other day. And
We'll
remember
put
what
it,
was?
we'll put it on the main landing page. We'll give it a more prominent position. We'll
Okay,
get it,
made-
so
yes,
you can,
made-
it'll be.
What was your,
easier for-
what was your question?
How to find it.
Oh,
How to
well,
find it.
I started out by showing you the home site for the watershed center of Grand Traverse Bay. Then we went to the tab that said get involved, and then went down to the fourth one, which was the guide. Yeah, so it's
We're gonna have
not,
it on the Elk-Skegemog website.
No,
We are gonna have it on the web.
you are going to have it on
It's
there.
there, but it's kind of hidden, and Michael's gonna make it more prominent.
Yes, and we hope that all the lake associations do that. Yeah. As well, it'd be nice if the townships did it too. Yeah. Okay, so that covers the 6 areas then that we thought were the priority. Go back to where I should be. Here we go, get involved. Go down. Okay, then the other thing that people liked in this book was something about the community of people interested in the preservation of our lakes. And that was, and we put this tab under community. And here are a list of all the lake associations with hyperlinks to those that have websites. Environmental organizations are 2 that really help us. The Watershed Center, Grand Traverse Bay, and Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. And then other organizations that are partners of ours throughout the watershed. And the conservation districts, hyperlinks to all those in each county of our 4 counties. Actually, Charlevoix is included. And then, of course, there are 2 state agencies, Eagle and DNR. So you can access all that from this website. Now, the other thing people liked in our riparian guide was history. And so we have did a lot of facts about the watershed, the lakes, dams, Native American populations, history and resources, watershed management, lots of interesting things here to delve into. So again, jump in and take a look at all that. Okay, then we said, okay, and so we sent this out to our fellow lake associations, and they said, well, you've really done good work, and we can add this or add that, and they gave us some good suggestions, and then they said, you're really missing recreation. And so we went back to work, and came up with recreation. Oh, I lost it again, hang on. See, I'm showing you exactly how to do this every time. Okay, recreation. So we came up with what we thought were the 3 priorities. Now, we have some pictures that were sent to us, but this is Bob Campbell's grandson. And some good resources here. And I want to mention the one that's on the Elk-Skegemog website is done by Ken Krentz, and he did this last fall, and he really did a super job. One of the reasons we wanted to do this digital is so we could keep things up to date. The other positive thing is that there are certain things that are out of print that you just can't find anymore, and this is a great example. This is a piece of work done by Doug Fuller back in the 90s, published in 2001. It's 135 pages, everything you want to know about fish in the Elk River chain of lakes watershed. And it's just a fantastic document. And then you must, if you're a fisherman, be able to go to this, which is where all our fish shelters are. So if you know kind of where these are, like this one I'm pointing to right here, can you see that? That's Elk Rapids Golf Course. There's the 4th green, the 5th green, and then right off the 6th green is this fish shelter. And you see the latitude is 44, and longitude is 85, So once you get close to one, you get your iPhone out, and you zero in, and you find the fish shelter. And so you see them all here, torch, clams got a lot of them. Now you say, why aren't there any in Lake-Skegemog? Do you know why? The DNR said, there's so many fish there, you don't need any shelters. They don't need any help. Okay, then we went to boating, and rather than, this kind of tells you where to get some classes for boating. It talks about Paddle Antrim and their waterfront, their chain of stops, etc. A lot of good stuff there about boating. And then the last thing I want to mention very quickly is that we have so many great parks and natural areas in our watershed. And so we've tried to list all of them here. We may miss some, let us know. And you can touch on any of these. And let me get one that's the most recent one for us. It's actually misnamed here. It says Torch River Bridge, but it's not. It's Torch River Ridge. And all the links that we have to these parks, pretty much all of them, go right back to Land Conservancy. And you can see that then you go to directions, the map, and so forth. Okay, so that's the work that we did over the last 18 months to replace this with something digital, something we can keep up to date, and we want to get access to everybody that can get to this. And when we send those letters to those new riparian owners, we're going to give them that link and encourage them to use it.
We've got a QR code that takes it right to them.
All right.
Michael does that.
All right, Michael, thank you. Any questions?
Okay, we're 7 minutes behind despite my best efforts, and you can either blame it on me or my mentor, Bob Kinga. So take your pick, but now you're gonna hear from our lake biologist.
Hello. My name is Sam. I'm your lake biologist. This is my 6th year with ESLA, and I'm going to very quickly go over most of our projects. There is a picture of me holding a purple loosestrife root that I just dug up. So in the water quality world, we sample for various sections of shoreline every year for E. coli. Just look for excess signs of nutrients like that green algae there, Cladophora. And all of those samples go to SOS analytical in Traverse City. So I write a report every year on each shoreline. I don't know if those are on the website. You can contact us if you were curious. Of other water quality monitoring that we do, so I've been called to people's houses for some weird algal growth, or this was a picture of the pollen last year that someone was worried it was algae. Erosion concern, weird things in the water, plant identification, invasive species, things like that. Anything that you have that you're worried about or wondering about, you can send me an email and I'll do my best to come check it out. This is a video, yeah. If you look very closely, you can see the little guys moving in that sample bottle. So we started plankton sampling last year. We do it 3 times in the spring, the summer, and the fall. We collect 10 samples on elk, 10 total on elk, Skegemog, and then the Torch River. Those 4 pictures on the bottom are pictures of organisms that we got in our results last year. So those are the things that you see in that bottle that, well, you can't actually see, they're microscopic, but that's what we're swimming with, which is a good thing. We want that. Like Bob said, the plankton is showing us the very bottom of the food chain. So it's helping us understand what is happening down there. And it would be interesting to know, like, what was the plankton like pre-zebra mussels, for example. So now that we've started this, it's truly a long-term data set that we're collecting. So then if and when the next invasive comes, we can understand what the population is right now. We are a part of this program with NOAA called the Phytoplankton Monitoring Network. So every 2 weeks, I go to 3 different sites and collect some samples and look for, I can identify 5 different harmful algal blooms, which are these pictures here. So like Microcystis and Raphidiopsis, those 5. So I bring them home. I have a microscope in my office, so I call it the lab. And we do that ice out to ice in. So I actually did it all year this year because we didn't have any ice. ESLA is a part of the volunteer lake monitoring program with Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. So we've got 2 people, one on Elk and one on Skegemog, that go out to the deepest spots of the lake a couple times a year and collect. That picture on the right is a Secchi disc. So that is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, pieces of scientific equipment, which is just this round disc that's painted black and white. So you drop that down, and when you can't see it anymore, you mark how deep it is, and then it tells you about the water clarity. So on Skegemog, we've been doing it. Dale Claude Pierre does it, and he did not used to put the Secchi disc on the bottom every time, and now he does. So it tells you that the water clarity is significantly different. We are a part of the Adopt a Stream program with the Grand Traverse Bay Watershed Center. So we have 2 sites that we go out and sample the macroinvertebrate population. So those are like little mayfly larvae. So before the mayfly hatch, there are these tiny little things that you can see with the naked eye. We collect them in the sites, and then we pick them, you can see in that big tray, into the ice cube tray, and then sort, identify, and count. So macroinvertebrates are really great water quality indicators because they're directly affected really quickly. So, and each species is more or less tolerant of pollution. So you get like a grade per site depending who you find and how many. In the invasive species world, we do various surveys for various different invasives and then work with the right contractors to develop a plan to kind of take care of it. So in the aquatic invasive world, this is a video too. This is a video of curly leaf pondweed that I took in May. It's got that very distinct wavy edge that's serrated. So I found this in Elk Lake, and then I actually discovered it in the Torch River as well. I've got the permitting in place to treat it in Elk Lake, and we're working on a plan for the Torch River. And Eurasian water milfoil, we've been fighting with that. We're very lucky we don't have a ton. So we've been fighting that for the past few years. And the little regrowth that we have this year, we are not gonna have to chemically treat. We'll either mechanically pull it or put a barrier over it and smother it. The terrestrial invasive, so yellow flag iris right here on the left, I took that photo just a couple weeks ago. It's just finished blooming. We did the survey for that on all of Elk and all of Skegemog. There was about, I didn't do the exact math, but I think there was just about 50 sites that we found it at. So I'll make a map, and then at some point we will be trying to we'll put it out there and contact landowners to hopefully remove it. And purple loosestrife blooms, again, they're both really pretty, but they take over very quickly. Purple loosestrife on the right-hand side is, when it's a mature plant, it can produce hundreds of thousands of seed, like one plant can, and they're tiny, tiny little seeds. So that blooms at the end of July. It has a really long bloom time. So we'll do a survey for that. We have been fighting that on the west side of Elk Lake for a few years, and we had to chemically treat most of it for a while, and then the past couple years we haven't chemically treated because the population is down so much and we can dig it up. And we're working, there is a fair amount of purple loosestrife in the Skegemog natural area, so we're working with Elk-Skegemog to get a treatment plan in place to tackle that. And then Phragmites we did the survey for. I found 2 spots that weren't very big, so that's great news. And the hemlock woolly adelgid, that is kind of a big deal. Elk-Skegemog found there was a report of it in the western side of Antrim County, so kind of near the Skegemog natural area. So this picture here shows we will be reaching out this winter if anyone is around and wants to help survey the hemlock trees specifically around the Skegemog natural area because it's so vulnerable. This is another video. So this is a new project for us this year, doing some aquatic plant surveys. ESLA bought some, that's the curly leaf pondweed there in the Torch River. So kind of a big deal. So ESLA bought GoPros, and we're gonna go out to a handful of sites at like the busier boat launches to start out. And you put one GoPro on the bottom looking straight down and one at a 45, and you just spin it slowly. And then I will go back and look at that footage and identify all the plants that are there. So historically, the plant surveys were done by, you go to a site and you throw a rake in each cardinal direction, and then you pull it up and identify everything. It's very time consuming. You have to have perfect weather on the water. But with the GoPro, someone could go out and quickly grab multiple sites in one day, and then when it's raining like today, I can go in and look at the footage and then identify the plants. So this will be incredible. Like, I didn't expect to find curly leaf in the Torch River, and I found it because of the GoPro. So we used your membership money to help buy this equipment, which is incredible, and we've already made great use of it. Later this summer, we'll have a shoreline workshop. So this is a part of the 5-year drone plan. We're gonna focus specifically on hardening of the shore. Last year we focused on buffer zones. So it's gonna be about a 1-hour event. We're working with a local contractor who's gonna do a presentation, who's the expert on bioengineering of the shore. So we'll send an email, so pay attention to that. I do shoreline consultations, so I can come to your house and offer any expertise or answer questions that you have about erosion or invasive species or plants or anything else. I'm happy to come out and take a look. I can help give you, I have a ton of materials that I can hand out and then direct you anywhere that is needed. I'm also on the Elk Rapids Shoreline Committee. I'm working with their shoreline management coordinator, Alexis, on implementing the shoreline assessment that was done. So I've done some invasive surveys with her, recommending different plants. That picture is a bunch of autumn olive that's on the Elk River. So then we're gonna figure out, the committee is making the steps to eliminate their invasives and addressing erosion concerns and water access on the Elk River. The rodent survey, so in May and in September, we have a handful of volunteers who go out and answer. It's like a 5-question survey that just asks about, you can kind of see in that picture on the right-hand side there's some undercutting of the bank, so erosion, if it's being used as a boat launch, invasive species, anything else. If there's, last year we had one of the rodents that had a dilapidated paddle boat that, I don't even remember who got rid of that, was it George? And then every year we host up to 4 boat washing events with Tip of the Mint Watershed Council. So they bring their mobile boat washing station and the boats just pull up there on those yellow stripes. And then it takes about 3 minutes to wash the boat. That's a hot water pressure washer. All the water collects in the bottom there. And then they pump that water back into a different tank on the trailer. And we have actually found aquatic invasives in the mat. So we know that we have for sure stopped some invasive species getting into the lakes. And then Bob mentioned the lake learning tours. So we just go out for 2 hours. The Elk Rapids Marina on Elk Lake very generously gives us lets us use one of their rental pontoon boats. So we go out for 2 hours and I give a quick rundown of lake ecology, like the plankton, the shoreline, a lot of things I said today, but in a little more in depth. We pull the plankton net, I throw a rake for aquatic plants. We talk about a lot, shorelines, water quality parameters. And lastly, just for some wake boat awareness, you want to stay about 500 feet from shore and at least 15 feet of water. So this is a quick map that I made that kind of shows the safer area for that to happen on Elk Lake. So you're in the deeper spot away from shore. Skegemog is tough because it's technically over. There's some spots where it's deeper, but Skegemog I would say avoid if you can. And there is my contact info and then just the Lake Association info. I don't know how I did on time, but if anyone has questions. Okay. The question was, if there's someone wakeboating close to shore, what do you do? From my understanding, there's no legislation on it right now. It's in the works, so there's no enforcement that can happen. A boat itself has to be 100 feet from shore, so if they're within that, then you can holler at them. But it's in the works. I don't remember where, if it's at the House or the Senate, but the legislation is happening to get a depth minimum and then a distance from shore. I think it's Ken's turn. Here.
Good afternoon, I'm Ken Krentz, and I look after fisheries here at ESLA. I want to talk about 3 fish today, brown trout, round gobies, and muskies. First off, brown trout. Over the last several years, since 2018, the DNR has planted over 260,000 brown trout in Elk Lake. And that's good news. The bad news is we're not catching them. In fact, we're catching almost none, and we believe they've moved. Fishing has gotten a lot better, brown trout fishing in Torch Lake. So we're quite sure they're moving over there. We don't really know why. The DNR has wanted to ID the fish before they plant them over the last few years by clipping fins, but they don't have the manpower to do it, and they're not going to in the future. So we volunteered to help them out, and last spring, you probably in your emails, you got a notice asking for volunteers to come and help clip fish fins. And happily, we got more responses than we could handle. So this spring, about a dozen or 14 of us, I can't remember how many, went down to the Harrietta Fish Hatchery down by Cadillac, and we helped the DNR clip fins on 36,000 brown trout before we released them. Here's a shot of us in the fin clipping trailer there. We went down actually for 2 different days, and we worked most of the day to get the job done. And here's a fish about to get his fins clipped. This year we planted 2 different strains of browns. There's a wild rose strain, and we clipped the right ventral fin. This is a ventral fin. This is the bottom of the fish, obviously. And we also planted Sturgeon River strain, and we clipped the left ventral fin. So down the road, when fishermen catch them, and if they're aware, they can turn in the information to the DNR, and we're able to try and figure out where they're living and how they're growing, etc. This next spring, we plan on posting all the launch sites and other places around Elk-Skegemog, Torch, and elsewhere. I'll be working with Three Lakes Association and the DNR to get this done, to get the word out that there's a bunch of marked fish out there that we're trying to track. Next fish I want to talk about is the invasive non-native gobies. A couple of years ago, we presented that we had positively ID'd the round gobies here in Elk Lake, and we knew we had them. We may have had them for 10 or 20 years. They've been in the Great Lakes system for probably 50 or 60 or 70 years now, ever since the ocean-going ships have been coming up the Great St. Lawrence Seaway. I'm bringing it up today because I've had several calls over the last couple of years since we ID'd these, identified we had these, and I've looked at several fish that fishermen have caught, as well as gobies in stomachs of fish. And I just wanted to point out today that I have only ID'd 1 goby positively. Gobies are very similar to our native sculpin. These are our native sculpins right here, and our gobies are here. They both look nearly identical. They live on the bottom. They scurry around when they sit on the sand or rocks. You really can't see them, but they're out there. The key identifying feature is the pelvic fin, which is right here on the bottom under the head. On a sculpin, there are 2 distinctly different fins. On a goby, those 2 fins are joined together, and it forms a shape like a suction cup or like a fan. It's very easy to see. And as the fish get bigger, as they get to be 6 inches long, these gobies, that thing it'll be as big as a ping pong ball. It'll look like a fan or a suction cup. So, like I say, I've only seen 1 so far. So, just wanted to get the word out again. If anyone IDs any of these things, please get with us. Take a photo of the bottom, and just let us know that you've seen these things. Like we think they've been in the lake for a long time. We don't know the effect they're going to have yet. At this point, apparently it hasn't been too bad because we're just not seeing too many.
Just explain why gobies are a problem.
Gobies can be a problem because of the nature of them. They can spawn several times a year, very prolific. They are scavengers, and they like to raid nests of other fish. They like to eat fish eggs. They like to eat little fish. They eat most anything. They'll compete with native fish, and they're very aggressive. That's on the negative side now. And like I say, they've been in the Great Lakes for a long, long time. They seem to fit in with the fish population that's there, as opposed to overrunning it. The zebra mussels kind of overran our lakes. And now maybe the quaggas will, we don't know. So far, these fish seem to just kind of fit in. They definitely compete, but they haven't really taken over yet. One thing about them that is positive is they're really good food fish for all the other fish out there. Bass love to eat these things. They actually prefer them, just like their favorite food is crayfish, but they really like these gobies. And in fact, if you notice, in the last several years now, bass have been getting bigger in Michigan, and they're thinking it's because they've got a lot more feed. We've had a couple of new state records in the last couple of years from Hubbard Lake, as well as the Sheboygan River. So anyway, wanted to bring that up and repeat it today, just so if you think you got one, photo and get a hold of us. Lastly, I'll talk about muskies. We don't talk about muskies much. Muskies are rarely caught by fishermen, even fishermen who target them, and most people never see them, have never seen them. I talked to a fisherman a while ago, an elderly guy, who said he's fished Elk Lake for 60 years, fished 4 muskies for 60 years. He's never seen one. So they're kind of a unique fish. They really are. But they're native to the Great Lakes. They're native to Elk-Skegemog, the entire chain of lakes. They're another fish out there. Unfortunately, their numbers are declining. So last fall, the DNR came out and planted about 1,400 in Skegemog Lake at the Baggs Road Landing. And here's a picture of one in our net. It's probably about maybe a 10 or 12 inch fish. Kind of a little skinny stick. They're brightly colored when they're young. They're light background and dark spots on them. So in time, we should have a little better muskie population, we hope. Lastly, I want to point your attention to this picture board I put together over here on muskies. And it's not meant to be a fisherman's bragging board. What it is, I've got some interesting facts there, because again, most people don't know about these fish. They're native, they're out there, and they're huge. They have some real interesting characteristics of how they live, but I just thought I'd throw in a couple, 3 pictures of ones I've caught and the very interesting story that goes along with it, and also a dead one that floated up on my shore a few years ago that possibly at the time could have been the state record. But so I hope you're interested, especially people who are non-fishermen, because again, they're out there. And they're a very interesting fish with a very different set of habits to them. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ken. I will apologize ahead of time that I'm talking about the lawsuit, and by nature, lawsuits are tedious, not really interesting, but stick around, because the presentation that comes right after me, it's really, really good. So although a lot of you know about this, I wanted, for those who don't know about it, I'm going to start from the beginning, quickly go through it, and get to where we're at today. So the Burnett update in 2023, after setting Burnett Foods, which is an important local employer and an important local industry, a notice of intent to sue, and getting no response, a suit was filed against Burnett in federal court. So the point being, we gave them plenty of notice. We asked them to come to the table. They refused to do that. The plaintiffs in the suit include ESLA, the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa Chippewa Indians, the Watershed Center of Grand Traverse Bay, and the defendant is Burnett Food. The lead attorneys for us are from a highly respected Great Lakes Environmental Law Center in Detroit. Great people. Several local environmental attorneys are also participating. They are all working pro bono, which is lawyer Latin talk for free. But the reason they're doing that, they have an expectation to recover their fees when they win this case. And I can tell you, lawyers who are experienced in this stuff, they don't take cases pro bono unless they expect to win. So that's a good sign for us. The quick facts are that Burnett has for decades dispensed food processing wastewater by piping it to a spray field west of Elk Lake Road and applying that wastewater to fields. That much is undisputed. We agree on that, not much else. The suit alleges that this spraying and the wastewater runoff it produces travels via wetlands and into Spencer Creek and into Elk River. That's a violation of the Federal Clean Water Act and the Michigan Environmental Protection Act. And those are the basis for the lawsuit that we brought. Upon being sued, Burnett didn't make an effort, once again, to address this with us. They made no attempt to negotiate with us, but rather filed a number of motions in an effort to dismiss the suit. These motions include a lack of plaintiff standing, lack of court subject matter jurisdiction, and a failure to state a cause of action for which the court can give a remedy. And it turned out that Burnett lost our legal team on every motion. That's good news. It's a major victory for us, but it doesn't mean we win. All it means is that the judge found our claims plausible, but they must still be proven. What that means is that discovery crunch time is here for our legal team and for the parties on our side, as well as Burnett, quite honestly. Discovery is a process of production and exchange of evidence between parties, including written interrogatories, requests for production of documents, a list of expert witnesses, of which we have some very impressive expert witnesses, and perhaps depositions. Those probably don't mean anything to you, but it gives you some idea of the complexity of the phase that we're entering into right now. Much more complex than what we've gone through so far. At the same time, we have to develop our strategy of presenting in the case. What evidence will we produce? In what form, by whom, and in what order? So that's where the case stands today. The non-attorney costs, which we need to talk about tonight, include printing, postage, paying expert witnesses, and producing transcripts and depositions, and it all adds up. It is common for a defendant with deep pockets, like Burnett, has no interest in settling, like Burnett, to try to wear down opponents financially. And I think we're seeing that. The three plaintiffs here have been asked by attorneys to establish a fund of $30,000 for the immediate expenses, with the awareness that it could run much higher if Burnett really digs in. Fortunately, blessedly, thanks to the support of ESLA, we have the money. Further, if we prevail, and we expect to, ESLA can recover the cost that it spends from Burnett. All the while, Burnett and the regulators at Eagle are negotiating. They could reach an agreement at any time, but even if they do, it does not mean we will accept the agreement unless it responsibly protects our waters. If necessary, we can and we will continue our lawsuit. And it's something we take very seriously. So the question you should all be asking yourself, the $30,000, it could be double that again, now divided between three plaintiffs, but is it worth it? You can see photos on the ESLA website of the foam on the surface of Spencer Creek. We have decades of serious state violation notices that Burnett has ignored. And finally, I've met with the riparians mostly impacted by the pollution, and I've been told by them about it. And the smell, the discoloration of the water, the staining of the bottom of the water, the staining of their boats, the staining of their docks, the fact that their grandkids could not swim in the lake for fear of their health. It's terrible. If any one of you were suffering that from this runoff, you wouldn't have any question about whether it's worth it or not. And that's just what's happening to these people. I haven't mentioned what's happening to the water, because what Burnett is putting in there. So that's why we take this very seriously. And my answer is, I would say it was worth it, and we need to finally put an end to this situation which has gone on for decades and decades. And that's where we stand today. Yes?
Question. Typically in cases like this, my understanding is that if somebody's doing something pro bono, they expect to reach a certain reward, so to speak. Out of that particular settlement, my understanding with regards to lawsuits like this, expenses are not necessarily burdened on the plaintiff, but they come out of what's going to be paid to the lawyers. Is that correct or not? I mean, the reason being is because I understand expenses to lose. Get that. But the idea here is if you win, it's not necessarily something that would come out of our coffer, but necessarily out of what's being paid to the lawyers.
Not exactly. The lawyers get their fees. And environmental lawyers don't get paid a lot per hour. But when they win a case, what they get is not what environmental lawyers get paid. It's an average what all lawyers get paid. And so they get a lot of money out of it. But in addition to that, we get our costs separately. So they don't have to pay out of their recovery for their time. They don't have to pay us. And so lawsuits are always a gamble. But I can tell you that I read the opinion that the judge issued, and my feeling, and I can tell pretty well, she's not real happy with Burnett's attempt to get this thrown out on the basis that they did. So I feel confident. And again, the fact that these lawyers are willing to go forward spending a lot of their time and therefore a lot of their money, it makes me feel pretty confident about it. Yes?
Yeah, where does this spill into the river? I mean, can we see this, where it comes in?
If you go there, you can see the pipe where it comes in, and it is, Sam, you've been there a number of times. Where's Sam at? Sam, how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's like a small where it comes into the lake, it's in a culvert. So it's a smaller culvert near some small white cottages in Spencer Bay.
Is it right in like the center of their whole business area, right?
No, it's further south than than Burnett's lakefront. Yep, further south than that.
One more question? Yes.
Is there a way to stop it now, like temporarily like injunction to stop them from polluting?
No, we have discussed that at length, and there isn't. And unfortunately, we're coming to the peak season for fruit processing, and that's really where these troubles are. In addition, Burnett is already building new lagoons, a new spray field adjacent to what they have already, and so we wish we could do it. But we can't. And hopefully they will do it responsibly because I said they are a major employer in a major industry. And so we don't want to hurt the area financially, but our mission is to preserve and protect the waters that we have here. And so we're really compelled to do that. And, yeah, one more.
Yeah, just a real
Sure.
quick question, and it's more of a legal question than a conjecture. Based on the fact that if we get a judge, let's say the plaintiffs get a judgment favorably to them, what's the appellate process and what's the length of that appellate process from there, on their part?
Good question, and I really don't have an answer for that. But also I need to make this clear. It's not a matter, I don't think, of us getting a win on this. What's going to happen is that Burnett and Eagle, the state agency that regulates this, they're negotiating. And they will come up with a plan that does not really satisfy the environmental concerns that we have. We have some great expert witnesses that have already looked at the ideas that they're using, so this is not a good idea. So we can move that a little bit. We can make it safer for the waters. We can improve it. And if we do that, then it's a win for us. We don't have to have a huge win where they can never do this again. But we just need to do enough that the process they use becomes environmentally sound. Okay, so Bob, who's next? Oh, I am. Okay, good. I promised you. The next one was going to be great. So all of you have heard of trigger warnings, right? In college, when you start talking about something that's going to make the kids upset, you give them a trigger warning, and so they can run out the door. So here's the trigger warning. I'm going to ask you for money. The bad news is the doors have already been locked. So you can't go there. And I got to tell you, it's not just you guys. I don't pick on you guys. I ask for money all the time for a lot of good purposes. And in fact, I was standing in line at the hardware store this week. It was kind of a long line. There was a guy behind me buying a bunch of nice cups. And I struck up a conversation with him. And I said, where do you live? He said, oh, I live on Fairmont. I said, that's on Skegemog, right? He said, yeah. I said, that's great. Do you belong to ESLA? And he said, I do. I said, wonderful. Are you coming to the annual meeting? He said, no, I can't. I'm going to be out on the boat with my kids. I said, well, that's too bad. We're going to miss you. But make sure you send money. He smiled. The people in line smiled. And I had enough time to get the numbers off his credit card. So he's going to be making a nice donation to ESLA. I'm kidding. That really, it happened, but I didn't get the numbers off his credit card. My eyes aren't what they used to be. So what I'm actually going to talk about is giving. And what's important is I never ask for money from people who can't afford it. I never ask for something that they're going to miss. And the reason I don't do that is that I know that they're going to get something in return that's even better. So when you give to ESLA, you're giving something that you're never going to run out of, money, and you're getting something which is far more valuable. And that is you are involved with something bigger than you are. Something that came before you and is bigger than you are and will be here after you. And that's a big deal. We all need to do that. So that's why I don't mind asking for money, and hopefully you won't mind either. So last year, you might mind my asking you, not that you go out and ask. Last year, remember, I talked about grizzly bears in the Bitterroot Mountains. Well, I'm not going to talk about that this year because I want to begin with Dr. Seuss's Lorax. Anybody remember the Lorax from Dr. Seuss? Well, the Lorax was a Dr. Seuss character, and he says, I am the Lorax and I speak for the trees. Let them grow, let them grow. But nobody listens too much, don't you know? Now, I don't remember that because I heard it when I was a kid, although maybe I did. I remember it because it came up in several federal lawsuits, several federal opinions on lumbering and forests. And the statement, who speaks for the trees, is a really important statement. And it made me think about this. Who speaks for the waters here? Who speaks for the bayou, for the Torch River, for the Rapid River, for Skegemog, for Elk Lake? That's a big question, and we'll get to the answer. But before I do that, I was thinking about Elk Lake. I've been on Elk Lake for 68 years, my whole life. And in a way, it seems like it's the same lake it's always been. And so I asked our biologist, Sam, Sam, give me a word, one word, for the condition of all these waters that we're talking about. And her answer was, they're vulnerable. There's a lot of things that are happening, and Sam talked about them, that these lakes are changing, and they will change, and not generally for the better. And plus, there's lots of things that we don't know about, and those are things that we need to be prepared for. And so I asked again, who's going to speak for the lakes? And I guarantee you, it's not the Lorax. He's already got a job, and is protecting the forests. And so the answer for this, I tried to find who speaks for lakes. I tried to find anything in a federal opinion, federal court opinion. It's not there. I tried to find something on the internet, who speaks for the lakes. Actually, I did have a couple of hits. One was this cooking show, and that was pretty much it. So I can tell you, ESLA speaks for the lakes. And I made a list of how we speak for the lakes, these lakes here. And how it happens first in how you steward your own shoreline and the lakes. That's how you speak for the lake. It's how you encourage your neighbors to be responsible in the same way you are. And you can also encourage other people by taking some of these stickers. Where are the stickers that we have? They're right in front. You can put those stickers on your car. You can put them on your coffee cup. You can put them on your neighbor's. No, don't put them on your neighbor's car unless they want you to. And you can promote ESLA in that way. Really importantly, your generous financial support through your annual membership donations. Thank you very much for doing that. Your encouragement of others to join ESLA. Again, talk with your neighbors, talk with your friends. Tell them about the work we do, and tell them about the great annual meetings, the great regular meetings that we have. It's wonderful. Your participation in the Champions program that we started a couple years ago, and we're really doing well, and it's supporting our environmental fund, which, as I've just described, is money that we need right now. If we hadn't started that a couple years ago, it would be very difficult to take the path that we're taking. And finally, please consider participating in a new program this year that Dean's going to talk about, the Legends. And Dean will tell you more about this, but I'll say it's the one way that each one of us can ensure our legacy of speaking for these waters long after we have passed on from these beautiful shores. And that will happen. We will all pass on from these, but there is a way that we can continue to protect them. So to me, it would be wonderful someday in the future, someone did a web search for who speaks for the lakes, and they come up with this answer. The caring members, past, present, and future, of the Elk-Skegemog Lakes Association. Wouldn't that be a great thing to find on the internet? And so I ask you, please give generously, give in as many ways as you can, and know that your gifts to us are always being used responsibly. So thank you. And Dean, come on up here.
So I've been remembering partly about this thing with brunette and the pollution they've been producing periodically. And ESLA was aware of that in 2005. I know that because I was president then. And they were getting violations from the state at that time. So this has been happening at least since that time. And as the board was aware of it, and we talked about what we could do. And one of the options was we should look into a lawsuit or legal action. And the board members just went berserk. Not berserk in the sense of supporting it, but berserk in the sense of we can't possibly do that. It may cost thousands and we don't have the resources. And they were right. We didn't have the resources because all the resources we had came from dues. Everything ESLA had came from dues. And our dues was $25 a year, or maybe $50. That's changed in the last few years. And one way it's changed is we now have a mechanism for giving. It's a simple thing, but it allows members that want to give to now have a way to do that. And there's really two ways. One is the Champions program, and that is a program where you can become a champion. It says, my hat says I'm a champion. Actually, my wife and I are champions. And that's simply a donation of $5,000 or more in any 1 year or over a 5-year period. The other opportunity is what we call an ESLA legend. And a legend is a person or an entity or a couple or whomever. It makes a commitment to give $20,000 or more when they pass on or before they pass on. I mean, you could be a legend right now, but basically it's mostly oriented toward people that want to do some estate planning and have that money directed to ESLA. Could be $20,000, could be more, could be a lot more. Sharon and I have made that pledge. Steve and his wife Deb have made that pledge, right? So right now there's two of us, two couples. We would like to get many more persons, couples, entities, foundations, whomever, to make that commitment. So we can continue to build a strong financial foundation for ESLA, so we don't get in a situation where we say, we can't do that, we can't do what we need to do because we don't have the resources. So I encourage you to participate as a champion or as a legend, and if you want to know more, contact me. Thank you.
Better not.
Okay, now, it says on, battery's dying, there we go. Because I know all of you want to run home and look at this riparian website, let's give Michael the weekend to at least get it on the ESLA website. But if you go to the Elk-Skegemog.org, I guess we are, and go to the main menu that's up in the corner, if you click on the main menu, you get a drop down and pick Protect Our Waters. Under Protect Our Waters is a thing that says ERCOL Watershed, Elk River Chain of Lake Watershed. Click on that because this document came from ERCOL. And then at the bottom of that page is this big long URL that starts with Watershed Council. So that's gonna be the riparian information and website. So I know if there's nothing good on TV this time of year, you might as well go home and play with that. So I know you're all interested in that. Thank you.
Hi, we still have some donated beverages left. And we also have a tip jar that doesn't go to the lovely people serving that donated tonight. But if you'd like to leave a tip, it goes all to the association. Thank you all for attending. It's great.
On the financial matters, what? Ken?
We gotta be sure to recognize Ruth for all the food tonight.
I did early in the meeting. You want me to do it again? Yeah. Let's hear it for Ruth. Let's hear it for her helper.
Non-board members, we just say at our meetings prior to this, we look at Ruth and say, how about the food? And she goes like this, and the food appears. So that's how we did it. For us.
On the financial we were talking about, I just wanted to say an experience I had for the first time. We have a number of board members who became champions a couple of years ago, and my wife Ruth and I were among those. And I had heard about this qualified charitable distribution, but really not explored it. And we happen to have one investment with Vanguard that was an inherited fund. And this year I learned how easy it is to use that. And the advantage of that is you in my case, I simply called up my advisor, told him what I wanted to do. They had a check made out to ESLA, and they sent it to me, and then I walked it across the street to Phil. And it has a very nice tax advantage. So just something to think about. And the Okay. The last thing, I promise, unless George wants to say something. And we apologize that we're getting you out of here a half hour late. But our next shore thing is going to be, this was some hardcore information you heard tonight. And this next one is going to be super fun. And we have a man named Steve Jessmore who has a place on the Torch River. That name didn't mean that much to me 6 months ago. I worked for the Free Press, Detroit Free Press, for 30 years. And I knew he was a photographer of some note. And I mentioned his name to some of my photographer friends, and they went nuts. They said he was Michigan when he worked for the Saginaw News and later the Grand Rapids Press, had won the Michigan Press Photographer of the Year more times than anyone from the Free Press or the News, and there's some good photographers down there. But what's really interesting with Steve, when the pandemic hit, he is a freelance photographer, and like a lot of freelancers and other people, as the pandemic began, his business kind of dried up, and he had this place on the Torch River. He's kind of up, if you know where the Elvis statue sits on top of a pontoon. He's right across the river from that. And anyways, he has gotten up close and personal and become an amazing bird photographer. in the first year he took this up, he shoots out of a kayak. He carefully studies what he does. He does not disturb the birds. The birds get used to him being there. And the first year he did this, he won the top award, the very top award of the National Audubon Society for Photography. And he pretty much repeated that the following year. And I checked with him about 3 weeks ago to make sure he was still on. He said, yep, I will be there. And he said, you know, I just had one of the most incredible mornings I have ever had with loons out here. Last night I thought they wanted to take my head off. This morning they were friendly. And he said he shot enough pictures of loons that morning to fill a book. And he's currently working on a major project with National Audubon. So that's one you shouldn't miss. It is, it won't stress your brains, it'll just make your eyes go wow. So thank you again for being here, and hope you enjoy it.
Before we adjourn, I think it's very appropriate that we thank Bob for his many years of service to ESLA and leadership. I think that you heard a lot of things tonight that are the result of Bob's leadership and the time he has put into our organization. And so he may be thinking he's retiring, and he knows he isn't. He's going to stay heavily involved with the board and with working on improving and expanding our communications. But I think it's very appropriate that we thank you, Bob, for all the years of service and continue. Sure.